Welcome to the Disgruntled PM podcast, your weekly therapy session for the chaotic world of project management, transforming daily frustrations into real action.
Welcome, everybody. I'm Trevor, the Disgruntled PM, and I hope you really enjoyed that two-part series with Sheriff Pat Melton about Pappygate. I really had a good time making that and enjoyed talking with him and getting to know him both as a person and also hearing those stories about that notorious case. So what I'd like to do now is I want to start at the beginning with this show about the basics of project management, and then we'll build our way up. Got a lot of exciting guests lined up as well. So what I'd like to do is start with the question for the audience. Have you ever tried to explain to someone what you do for a living as a project manager? You get that slow, confused nod. They think they know what you're doing. They think that you just deal with spreadsheets, or they say, "Oh yeah, I had a project manager that took care of my kitchen remodel." And you just kind of look at them and go, "No, that's not what I do." We're going to get back to the basics today about ways to answer that question, defining actually what we do and how we do it. And we're going to do this through the lens of reality. This is project management the way they should have taught it, with less theory and more talk about the chaos, the stakeholders, and the good idea fairies that make our jobs oh so special. Let's start with the definition from PMI of what a project is. It's a temporary endeavor undertaken to create a unique product, service, or result. Such a great definition. So clean, so simple, so optimistic, right? Well, let's translate that for everybody in the back of the room that might not fully grasp what that means, because as PMs, we do know in a lot of cases. Temporary. That means that the chaos is supposed to end. It's a comforting lie that we tell ourselves and our stakeholders at the project kickoff. It's what distinguishes our work from the ongoing operations. Those soul-crushing days that grind away and never stop. Our grind is supposed to stop eventually. And that's kind of a great place to start with the delineation between a project and an endeavor, because a project has an end. It has a goal in mind. It has a finish, and then you move on. It's something that you can say, we're done, we wrap it up with a bow and move on. You know, a delivery date, a release date, a sale date. But there's other things like in Agile with mostly software or websites where there's continuous improvement. They're never done because there's always something to work on. There are always bug fixes. There's always something going on, and that kind of helps delineate between a project and not a project. Now, unique. That's the most important word in this sentence, because it means that you are doing something that has never been done before in exactly this way before. That's corporate speak for there is no playbook and you are making it up as you go along. Every project is unique. Let's take the example of your drive to work today. Technically, that's a project because it had a start, you left the house, it had a finish, you arrived at work, and then it had a unique service that was along the way there, because everywhere you went, you could take the exact same route every day to work, but it's always going to be a unique experience because the combination of traffic lights, the cars around you, how fast you can go. Is there an accident? Is there construction? Did you just hit every green light and made record time, or did you hit every red light? You know, that is a perfect example of a project because it checks all those boxes. Now, every project, whether it's launching a new piece of software or trying to get your kids out the door for school, is governed by three competing forces. It's typically called the iron triangle. I'm going to refer to it as the triangle of pain, because as the PM, you're always getting squeezed by at least one of the three sides. We all know the three sides and we're all very familiar with them: scope, schedule, and budget. So let's start talking about each one of those and define them a little bit better in real terms as opposed to the book terms. Let's start with scope. Scope is the what. What have you promised to do? What features? What deliverables? What glorious outcomes have you signed your name to? In theory, this is all defined and agreed upon at the beginning of the project. You build your scope statement, your statement of work, your charter, all those things have your scope defined. But in reality, scope is the Thunderdome where the good idea fairy comes to visit. I managed an interior drone project, first of its kind, and everyone had ideas about what the drone should do, how we should have it improved, and we're also questioning why it already didn't do certain things. I had a whole bunch of people that knew a little bit about this thing telling me what it should and shouldn't do. And that, my friends, is what we call scope creep. Your job is to be the polite but firm bouncer at the door of your project scope. You have to be the one that checks the IDs, that verifies they're real, and then says that can come in, this can't. No scope survives from start to finish unchanged. There's always going to be change. But you've got to be able to know what is change that's good and what change is bad and what change is just change for change's sake. So the next thing up on the list is schedule. This is your timeline, your milestones, the date that is circled on your CEO's calendar in red to say, I expect it on this date. In the real world, time is a magical elastic resource that everyone but the project team thinks is infinitely flexible. I once had an experience where I had a key stakeholder who delayed a key decision for 3 weeks. They came to me and asked, we still on track for the original deadline, right? And I just had to smile, take a deep breath, and take a drink of water to avoid saying what I was really thinking, that, you impacted this deadline by just not making a decision. And then I had to break out the Gantt chart of broken dreams and start the negotiation. I had to explain to the stakeholder why we aren't delivering on time now, but not make it sound like it was their fault. I had to explain that there were delays because they couldn't make the decision. And then we as the team and the project manager had to adjust accordingly, maybe do a few other different things and move around. But we basically had to be dancing to make this work. And yes, there was some ability to recover time in that project, but that's not always the case. So finally, we have budget. And this is the how much. How much is it going to cost? The resources, the money, the sacred cow that we fought tooth and nail for in the planning process. It's the number that was approved after weeks of horse trading and spreadsheet manipulation. It's that moment where the stakeholders will forget everything that they agreed to because they want something shinier and more expensive and a new feature, but they don't want to pay for it. Resources are also key because resources are not just money, but people. That subject matter expert that you need to code something who's only available on Tuesdays and Thursdays between the hours of 1 and 1:15. We've all been there. We've all had those experiences where there's a finite amount of resources and we need something very specific with no ability to get it. So this leads us to the golden rule of the triangle of pain. Good, fast, and cheap. You can have any two you want, but you can't get all three at the same time. Want it fast and good? It's going to cost you. Want it fast and cheap? Probably not going to be that great. Want it good and cheap? It won't be fast. Your job as the PM is to be the broken record that gently, but professionally, and repeatedly reminds everyone of the fundamental law of the universe. Let's be honest for a minute. Managing the triangle of pain is the easy part. It's the charts and numbers. But the real job, the part that makes us all so wonderfully disgruntled, is managing the people, the stakeholders, the project team. A stakeholder is anyone who has interest in or can be impacted by your project. It's your boss, your teammate, the end user, the person in finance who takes the 3 weeks to approve a PO, the CEO who just read an article about blockchain. Everyone. Your project team technically also falls under the category of stakeholder, but are less influential in the concepts of the project. Their focus is to actually make the magic happen and get the work done. I was once managing a project where my key stakeholder was a personable but incredibly indecisive person and a department head. We needed the sign-off on the final design. On Monday, they loved blue. On Tuesday, after talking to a friend, they decided green was the more calming color. On Wednesday, their favorite influencer posted about orange. So obviously we had to go with orange. You know, this is all stuff that we as PMs have dealt with on a daily basis. And in this particular case, my job wasn't managing the design of the project anymore. It was managing the emotional and aesthetic journey of one person's color preferences. Your success as a PM is not about how well you can build a project plan. It's not about how meticulously you can spend your money on budget with the resources you have to make everything line up right. It's not about your schedule where you time everything out perfectly. You build in your lead and lag, you build in your constraints, your dependencies, you get it all just right so it's perfect. It's a work of art. But guess what? It doesn't matter because at the end of the day, we're going to change things. Life is going to happen to these projects, and we just need to start with a good enough plan and be adaptable as we go. It's the ability to navigate the competing, contradictory, and often irrational expectations of a dozen different people who all believe their needs are the most important thing in the universe. That's the job. Now let's touch on the part that nobody talks about outside of the PM profession. What I consider to be the most critical and important part of the job: communication. Communication is the most important skill that a PM can have. It's what separates a good PM from a great PM. Can you effectively communicate with your team, with your stakeholders, with your executives, with your customer? Understanding and knowing your audience is what can make or break a project. Do you understand how to translate highly technical information from your subject matter expert to the executive who only cares about if your project is on schedule and the right pieces are in place in the right locations on time? I refer to the PM as the conduit of information. You're in charge of making sure information goes upstream and downstream, making sure everyone is on the same page. If this position was on a sports team, you'd be the coach, the person giving guidance, course corrections, and occasional praise, but also the sharply worded email as needed. There are a lot of different strategies for building out your communication skills, but the most valuable thing that I've understood over my career is you have to know how to read a room. You have to learn people and their behaviors and their tendencies, because you're going to spend a lot of time with these people on projects, both stakeholders and project team alike. You need to understand how they think, how they communicate, and adapt to them. You are a chameleon to adapt to everybody around you. I once had a director who I would have a meeting agenda. I would send it out ahead of time. I would tell everybody what's going on. And then in the middle of the meeting, he would just throw a stick of dynamite in it, have an idea or have a topic that he wanted to discuss, and we weren't moving on until he was satisfied with the topic. Now this becomes a problem if you've got stakeholders, customers, a variety of people on a call, and one person hijacks your meeting. Or even worse, 2 or 3 hijack it. So you need to be able to communicate, understand how that person works, and figure out the fastest way to get them happy and move on back to your agenda. Because when this is all the communication skills, this is all the type of stuff that nobody teaches in books, but there's a whole field dedicated to it called organization development. There's so much that goes into this that we don't talk about. There's the idea that when we create our project plan, some PMs are meticulous about it. Some PMs just do good enough. And when you do just good enough, that's great until it's not. Being a PM is a very delicate, high wire act of balancing constraints, requirements, and also just people, dealing with people, getting them to agree to what you need them to agree to. And sometimes you have to trade. Sometimes you have to give up things. Sometimes you just have to negotiate or just know how to ask somebody for something. This is all part of being a project manager, and it's all part of how we do our job from day to day. So there you have it. The beginning, the basics. A project is just temporary chaos. It's the constant battle between what you can deliver, when you can deliver it, and how much it's going to cost. And most importantly, it's all about the people. My challenge for you this week is before you start any task, even just writing an email, ask yourself these 3 basic questions. Am I delivering scope? Am I delivering what I need? Am I delivering something of value that's a unique proposition? When's it due? When do I need to have this completed by? And who needs to be happy with it? The stakeholders involved. If you can answer those 3 things, then you're already ahead of the game. You're not just reacting, you're managing. You're fighting back against the chaos. I'll give you an example of something from my personal life, and that's getting my kids out of the house in the morning to go to school. We have a routine every day that we follow, but as young children will do, they act like it's the first day they've ever done this when they've done this for years. So what do? We have a timeline set up of when we're going to leave or when we need to start the process. We have a goal of getting the kids out of the house, shoes on, teeth brushed, backpacks, lunches, all the things that need to be done to get them ready for school. And the budget is just, well, there is no budget for that one. Sorry. But the idea is we're getting these, we can treat things like a project, and the everyday things become simpler because you're breaking it down into concepts that you understand as a PM. So please don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe. And if you enjoy the content, tell a friend. Heck, tell all your friends. I won't judge you if you do. But if you don't, I may. So I'll end this with, may all your deliverables be on time, your budget's in the black, and your scope not creeping. I'm still Trevor, and I'm still the Disgruntled PM.